Hey, 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 it's AAA Wednesday, which stands for Ask Alyssa Anything. It's my weekly Q&A session where I'm popping into the comments and addressing questions you've left me about your writing and publishing journey. It's my small way of saying thank you to my amazing community of now more than 38,000 amazing authors. I'm so grateful to be a small part of each of your writing journeys. A couple of pieces of housekeeping. I'll keep it very quick. First, if you can hit that thumbs up button, it takes about a second, but it really helps out my channel. And if you haven't yet subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on my future Q&A sessions, as well as my deep dives into specific writing techniques and aspects of the publishing industry. Let's get into the first question today. I'm curious, as often happens, agents pass on a book idea only for that book to eventually get picked by a different agent, and the book becomes a major hit. Has any agent ever said how it feels to have passed on something that became a big hit elsewhere? Or do they just kind of shrug and continue looking for the next idea that intrigues them? Admittedly, I haven't talked to an agent one-on-one who was in this situation where a book that they passed on then became a major bestseller. But of course, this happens. It also happens on the publisher side where a publisher passed on a book and then it became a major bestseller. We've all heard the stories of J.K. Rowling going through many, many rejections before getting the Harry Potter series published and becoming one of the world's best-selling authors, right? So I can only speculate on how they might feel based on what I know. Agents and publishers understand that when they are taking a chance on a book, it is a bit of a gamble on how the book is going to be received by readers. There are no guarantees in publishing, and if publishers and agents could predict what books were going to be major bestsellers, then the industry would look quite different. All they can do is trust their taste and trust their instinct and trust their expertise based on their experience. I'm sure that agents and publishers who missed out on a bestseller feel some amount of regret or disappointment, but I also don't think that they get down too much because there's always the next book out there just waiting for them to find. And I think people in the publishing industry tend to be generally pretty optimistic, and people who love stories and who are excited to see that readers are gravitating towards something. So I don't think there's any animosity wrapped up in not being the one who represented a bestseller. Here's the next question. How important is character versus plot, or is it based on the genre or subgenre? No matter what genre you're writing in, both character and plot are absolutely critical. That said, in certain genres, readers will be expecting more character development, and in other genres, readers might be expecting a more swift-moving, fast-paced plot. But honestly, in my opinion, the best stories balance both equally. This will often come up in discussions of literary fiction, for instance, where the story tends to be more character-driven and also driven by the style of the language itself versus a plot that sounds super intriguing or has a ton of crazy developments in it. When we're talking about more commercial fiction, such as mysteries or romance, then there will definitely be a focus on plot because readers will be coming to those novels with a certain expectation for the story to intrigue and excite them and deliver an ending that is satisfying. That said, when you are composing your novel, I recommend giving ample attention to both character and plot to create the most robust story possible. Because readers are going to feel if your plot is anticlimactic or boring, and they're going to feel if they can't connect to your characters or understand them. Both are absolutely foundational elements of good storytelling. Here's the next question. I anticipate being finished with my current project by year's end. I want to try the traditional publishing route, which means I need an agent. At what time do I need to start researching agents and start working on the query letter? Also, I would like to start locally as far as an agent goes. Is that wise, or are all the good agents in New York? I live in the DFW area. Let's tackle the first part of this question, which is, when should you start writing your query letter and researching agents? There's no specific rule on when you should start researching agents or drafting your query letter. I've even heard advice that some writers like to write the query letter before they even write the novel, so they understand the pitch that they're going for, and then that informs how they approach the story itself. I don't necessarily think you need to take that approach, but it just goes to show that you can work on these documents and you can research agents whenever it makes sense for your individual process. I will say that most authors would finish the novel and then work on the query letter. And that's because your novel might end up being something very different than what you originally thought it was going to be, especially as you go through, hopefully, rounds of developmental editing work to make it as strong as possible for presentation to agents. And you want your query to reflect the most updated version of the novel, right? Maybe you add an entire plot element or you heighten the stakes in such a way that is going to affect how you pitch the book in the query letter. Maybe you lean into certain genre elements that you want to incorporate in the query letter. That said, if you want to get started on your query letter draft now, just to get the wheels turning, that's totally fine. I would just recommend at least turning back to it after you've completed the full manuscript draft to make sure that it does reflect the story in its current state. And as for researching agents, you don't necessarily need to do this during your drafting process. You can wait until you have a completed draft. Now, as for the question of agents' location, you will see that many literary agents and agencies are based in New York City because that is the hub for the traditional publishing industry. All of the big 5 publishing houses are headquartered there, and it's kind of the center of the book world in the US. But literary agents in New York represent authors all over the country and all over the world. And there are literary agents that are based all across the country as well. That said, I don't think you necessarily need to look for an agent who is based in your specific city or geographical region. Most of your work together is going to be done digitally anyway, so there's really no reason that your agent needs to be in person in the city that you live in. Of course, if you have that connection, that can be great. But I don't want you to limit yourself only to agents who are in your area, because there are likely going to be agents based in New York or maybe even London that you want to query, and it's not necessarily better or worse for them to be near where you live or based elsewhere. If you've been enjoying my YouTube content, I have great news. There is so much more just waiting for you on my newsletter website, chapter-break.com. I've been getting so much amazing feedback from all of you that you're loving the newsletter, including the literary agents and the authors that I'm featuring, and I'm so excited to bring you so much more. By signing up to receive my newsletter, you are going to get my free story self-assessment worksheet. This is a quiz I designed to help you take a look at your work in progress and see the areas you can improve on the next draft, because I know that can be so challenging to figure out on your own. The links to download your free story self-assessment worksheet and check out my newsletter are in the description below. We have time for one more question today. Let's say, this is totally, completely, 100% hypothetical, that you've sent a small number of queries, hypothetically less than 12, and have a decent request rate, hypothetically 36%. Do you keep querying or wait until you hear back on the requests? My query letter and sample chapters are clearly working, but what if my full manuscript doesn't? I'm afraid of exhausting my agent list by continuing to query and then getting rejections because the manuscript has problems. Instead, I could wait to hear back, take the rejections as data points, seek out admittedly another editor for help, and do better on my next round with a revised version. But by not querying additional agents, I'm limiting my options if I do get an offer. I know there's no straightforward answer to this, as no one who hasn't read the manuscript can judge the quality, but it's a conundrum I haven't heard discussed much before. First, I'm really excited to hear about your query stats. Sending less than 12 queries and getting 36% full manuscript request rate is a really strong sign that your pitch and your sample chapters are resonating, as you said. So this is a very promising place for you to be in. In your particular case, I would err toward the side of waiting to hear back from the agents who have requested the full before sending out more queries. Because that way, if and when these agents get back to you, hopefully with some kind of feedback, if they end up rejecting you, then you can turn back to the manuscript and make it even stronger for your next batch of submissions. That said, if there is an agent that you're really, really dying to submit to, and if you got an offer from one of these agents that are considering the manuscript now and you would regret having not sent a query to this agent that is a dream agent on your list, maybe you should go ahead and query that dream agent as well, just so they're in the mix. That said, I don't think you should query any agent that you genuinely wouldn't like to work with. So hopefully the batch that you already have out are covering your bases such that you would be happy to work with any of them, in which case I think there's really no harm in just waiting to see how those pull requests pan out before sending out more queries. That's all we had time for today. If you have a question you'd like to ask, drop it in the comments here and it will be added to my queue for my next session. Before you head out, don't forget your free story self-assessment worksheet and my newsletter links in the description below. And go ahead and give me a thumbs up if you're enjoying these sessions. If you haven't yet subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button as well so you don't miss out on my next one. Thank you so much for watching and happy writing.